For more information, go to www.portaltalkradio.com. Now, Portal Paranormal Talk Radio brings you your hosts, Tuesday Miles and...
Hey, welcome to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm your host, Tuesday Miles.
And I'm Angela Thomas.
How are you, Angela?
I'm just fine, Tuesday. How about yourself?
Well, I'm going to be a little quiet today, actually. I lost a dear friend of mine this week, a 30 friend. She was a neighbor and a friend, and we buried her today. And so, today, I want to send out my condolences to the Hall family, and I would love to dedicate the show for my good friend, Karen, who we really miss and love. And it hasn't been an easy week. It really hasn't, Angela. But, I have to say, with her death, though, I have learned some just awesome lessons along with it. And so there's that, that take that you get from it sometimes, and then you get that give. So, I think in itself, though, that with the lessons that I really did get out of losing my friend and the experience that I had with her, because I was with her, and was able to see her up until her last breath. But, and then, I was there with her. I had left the house about 10 minutes, and I had been gone from the house for about 10 minutes, and when her husband called me after that and let me know that she had gone. But, just some amazing experiences, and we could talk about that another time, and maybe I can ask some questions for our guest today. And why don't you introduce our guest that we have on today? I'm really excited about this.
Well, our guest is Bob and Fran Ginsberg of the Forever Family Foundation. And what synchronicity, Tuesday, that you just mentioned, because Bob and Fran are the founders of the Forever Family Foundation that helps with grief support. And they also provide scientific research on the afterlife. So we do have them on the line. Welcome to the show, Bob and Fran.
Well, thank you very much. And we're so sorry to hear about your friend Tuesday. And we wish you and her family, our thoughts will be with you today.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Hi, Fran.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm in the moment with you, and I know it is a difficult thing, but the one thing I think we all have to look towards is the concept that science is verifying with us, is that our loved ones really are with us, even though they're not physically visible to us all the time.
Absolutely.
And I know, I was going to say, I wish you loads of signs from her, but I just know you're going to get loads of signs from her in the next couple of hours, days, weeks. She's still with you.
I believe that. I really do believe that. It's just that, and because the fact that she did have a very strong belief in God, and was such a great person here on us. And so I think the fact of it is that there's reasons to stay around love. There's reasons to cross and go further what you need with that. But I believe too that our loved ones do stay around and still continue to send love and receive love from us. Don't you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you know what? And it doesn't minimize our pain. Our pain is our pain. They're not here, and there's an emptiness, and that doesn't go away.
Fran, do you believe that with the knowledge that you and Bob have gained through your foundation with scientists and mediums and, just a huge amount of discoveries, does that help you on a personal level know that those friends and loved ones are truly living on?
Oh, absolutely. And Bob and I, we debate this all the time because I seem to have some sort of, and I think some of your listeners may resonate with this, an inner knowing that I've had all my life. And it doesn't come from what I was taught at home or what I grew up with. It was just something that I knew. And now having gone through a very deep personal loss, it was almost validating that this information that I had with me all along, even as a child when close relatives would pass, I seemed to have a place in my mind that told me that they were still around, that they were okay, and that they were definitely in a better place. And now here I am, an adult many, many, many years later, and we've put this foundation together, and now I'm working with scientists who are basically saying, oh, what you knew so many years ago really can be validated.
Well, when people say they're in a better place, we always want to say that. We think that that's the first thing we want to say to somebody. They're in a better place, and then, of course, the person who was, the one left behind say, they're not in a better place. The better place would have been with me. And I think about, well, in a better place, though. It's like, we enjoy all these good stuff. We go to concerts and on cruises and good food and good friends. And then we get to the other side. Do their visualizations still continue to enjoy the things like that? Or what is it that they do, you think that they do enjoy more over there than here?
Go ahead, Bob, because Bob and I are going to differ on this.
Yeah, Bob.
Well, well, first, I was not blessed with that inner knowledge, and I needed a lot more, evidence or validation. What you're going through now with your friend Tuesday, and it's the finality of it. Here she was, a vibrant person, a meaningful person, a person that you enjoyed being with, and now it's hard to conceptualize the idea that she's no longer here. And if death is final, it's I couldn't live with that. I had to know whether or not we survive our physical deaths, whether we're more than our physical bodies. And so I, approached it from the other end. But, from everything that we've discovered, to answer your question, I think that, this, what we call the other side, is just a continuation. It's like another phase that we go through. Obviously, we're entities of thought, but thoughts are very, very powerful. The science shows us today that thoughts can move physical objects. They can make imprints on tape. They can transmit thoughts to you when you're in a dream state or meditating, or perhaps just in a waking state. So I think that when we're on the other side, that we can manifest all of these physical things if they make us feel more comfortable, and we can, but we have the ability to be in many places at once. If we have a particular interest, we can just manifest it by thought. So, most of the accounts that, of course, nobody knows for sure. We're going by mostly channeled messages and mediums telling us what they have learned, and examining the physical evidence here. But of course, that's the question everybody wants to know: what's it really like? But I don't think that it's far-fetched to think that we can live pretty much any life that we want. I think it's a mistake, though, to think that some people think that when we cross over to this other side, that somehow we're immediately endowed with this vast knowledge of the universe. I don't think it works that way. I think that we go through a learning process on the other side, much the way that we do here in the physical.
I've heard a lot of people. I've read a lot of people who have described that same thing, Bob. That we don't automatically, encounter wisdom, and we're ready to work, and we know why we're all here. But those with near-death experiences have described hearing beautiful music, unconditional love, the wonderful light that is associated with God. What are your thoughts on that, with working with mediums and those people in science? Have they mentioned this to you?
Yeah, and near-death experiences perhaps are the most evidential thing that we can examine, because here we have people that are totally deprived of all senses. Their brains show no activity. Their hearts have stopped. They have shown no reflexes. So by all definition, they're dead. And so they have no sensory capability. And yet at the same time, when they get, revived, and modern technology today, more and more people are coming back, and they describe all of these unbelievably sensory experiences. They they see colors, they touch people, they have conversations, they leave their bodies, and the thing that's extraordinary about the people that go through these experiences is that they're life-changing. It's not something where, you know, an hour or two later they say, you know, maybe this really, you know, it stays with them pretty much for the rest of their lives. And they a lot of them transform their physical existence and make drastic, you know, life changes. So, I mean, it would take some pretty compelling evidence to get somebody to change their life, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that it offers us, you know, lay people and scientists, you know, some tremendous evidence. And when you think about those cases of near-death experience where people leave their body and describe the goings-on not only in the operating room, but in the surrounding rooms in the hospital and on the roof and so forth, I mean, it's very hard to explain how somebody that has no senses and is physically dead can repeat conversations and tell, you know, describe in great detail their surroundings.
You know, interesting. I was just thinking that, you know, and I haven't really paid attention to this, where different people who have experienced, you know, near-death experiences in a different religious sort, where versus there's Muslim or there's Christian, you know, wondering if they've had, or they describe the same type of experience, versus whether, because based upon religion, that it was a different experience.
Yeah, it's a good question, and research shows that we do when we encounter these things, our social upbringing and religious beliefs enter into the picture. For instance, you know, somebody in the East, you know, might see a glowing entity, and they might describe it as Buddha, you know, or they might describe it as Muhammad. And here in this country, somebody, you know, might describe this being as Jesus, or, you know, as Moses, right. Or, you know, so they're seeing the same thing, but we do have conscious interpretation. That's basically what you're describing. And the experience is the same, but we still have the ability to, you know, to interpret even in that state, and that's where that, or maybe the interpretation comes after we're revived, and we're trying to process it through our physical brain.
Well, you speak to a lot of researchers on the survival of consciousness and separation of mind and body. Has that altered in any way? Are they pretty much consistent in their findings?
Well, you know, it's funny that, you know, most researchers very few of them will actually say, oh, yes, you know, nobody says this is proof of an afterlife or proof of survival. You know, what they say is that this evidence strongly suggests, you know, that we survive a physical death, and you know, this area of research is segmented just the way, you know, the doctors are segmented. You have a specialist for everything. You know, your family doctor sends you to this specialist and then another specialist. Well, you know, in the area of survival and so-called paranormal research, I mean, you have MDs that only study near-death experiences, and then you have other researchers and MDs that study reincarnation, and others that study intention and telepathy, you know, and others that study electronic voice phenomena, and, you know, some that study, you know, deathbed visions, and each one is mainly, you know, expert in their own field. You know, what I would like to see more of is all of these people getting together and find some common denominators, and maybe we could find the secret or the mechanism that allows all of these things to occur.
Well, Bob, you know, you and Fran with the Forever Family Foundation, one of the goals is to raise money to fund such experiments. Is that correct?
It's true, and you know, it's we've been in existence now, what, Fran, 4 years?
2004.
You know, so we're not at that point. We're about to, you know, try to fund some small, you know, things, but you're right. The goal is to be able to make some large grants to various foundations and universities, because, you know, the national Institute of Health and various government organizations, are not readily making available funding for things like survival of consciousness.
Right.
They will. There is some money available for things like healing and biofeedback and things of that nature. But that's why you find so few of these psychical researchers today. It's not feasible. They still have to. It takes money to do these experiments, and they need money to live. So it's somebody has to be able to coordinate these efforts and provide some funding, and that is one of the goals.
Absolutely. Well, also to kind of put yourself outside of the box and to create these, documentaries, these experiments. Also, too, that within the paranormal or within the the loss and grief of someone who has passed. Sometimes that we get caught up in the black and white of it, and let it go as it is without trying to discover new things about it, to understand it. Some say that we aren't supposed to understand it, that it is what it is. And if we do understand it, if we do find more information on it, what good is it going to help us with? And I disagree. I think it would help a lot of people.
I agree with you. I not only think it would help a lot of people, I think it would change the whole direction of the way this world is going. I mean, this world has become a really nutty place. And just imagine, if we really, really, really knew that this was just a blip, this physical life was just a blip in a much bigger picture, and there was more accountability beyond this, people would be nicer to each other. Look, I don't know if you know any people who have had near-death experiences, but the ones that I have met, they are the most they would give you the shirt off their back, literally. Physical stuff means nothing to them. They really have this view that they are there for the greater good, that there's a bigger picture. And if we were all like that, imagine what kind of a world we would have.
Why? What do you think they think it's, why the bigger picture? The fact that they've given a second chance at life? Are they using it as, it was their gift to be brought back? Or they've seen what the other side is?
I think that it's the fact that they've experienced death and they've survived. They've seen the other side. Just the knowledge that there is another side is enough to transform you, because it's not anecdotal. They're not hearing it from a medium. They're not seeing it in a dream. They're living it. They die and they see this other side, and they have all of these experiences, with either light or other beings or gardens or colors.
Right, and it's not the concept that they've given another chance at life. Many of these people, if asked, would say they want to go back to the light, or they want to go back to where they were. They're not happy being back in the physical world.
I think
read
also
Anna Maria Hemingway's book, The Living and Dying of Consciousness. And one of the things I found very consistent in the near-death experiences that she wrote about was, like you say, wanting to stay with that light, that unconditional love, but also they were given insight to their connection in the universe. In other words, what my purpose was while I was on Earth. And isn't that something that, no matter what culture anyone is living in, we all share one thing in common, and that is, what is my purpose in life? And isn't it a wonderful reward when we are given that almost immediately in passing?
Yeah, I agree, and I think you hit it on the head with what is our purpose? That is the question that philosophers have been asking for the millennia. Is that does our life have a purpose or does it not? Is it random, or is it part of some sort of design? And it's kind of frightening to think that our life has no meaning, and we have no purpose, and it's I think that gives rise to a lot of depression, among people. But going back to something that you said before, I hear that a lot. What is, why do we want to study these things, and what difference would it make? And for a lot of people, as Fran said, she has this inner knowledge, and I don't. What I find for somebody like me is that when I suffered a horrible loss of a loved one, and I get into bouts where I have days where I hit bottom, and the difference is I'm able to dig myself out because I logically go through all these things that I've learned, and I say, wait a second, I've learned this and I've learned that and I've learned this, and it has to be, and then I'm able to reassure myself, so to speak, that there is more, and that in my situation, my daughter still survives, and I'm able to live a meaningful life, and so I think that's the value of it in learning. The more that somebody like me learns, for people that think the way I do and without this, spiritual background or inner knowledge, it's helpful in getting through grief. It's enormously helpful.
Well, absolutely, because you still want to believe that, your daughter, because she's not right next to your side in body and spirit. I mean, spirit she is, but that she's still she's still happy, she still feels loved, she's still protective, she's still doing things that makes her happy. We all, especially with the child on this aspect on it, Bob and Fran, that's what I still want to believe on it. I had a little girl's spirit approach me one day in my house, and she kind of shocked me because she came right through the wall. And as I was looking at her, and she asked me, "Have you seen my mommy?" And it startled me because I thought, okay, this little girl must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And I looked at her and I said, "Have you looked in heaven?" And she looked at me and she said, "Where's heaven?"
Wow.
I'll tell you, it changed everything that I thought I believed in before. The fact is, I thought, oh, this is not right. This is not right. Because if a parent thought for 1 second that their child who had crossed was wandering around by themselves, every parent that ever lost a child would end their life to be with that child. And we can't think that. So I really wanted to go through that process of why this child was wandering around and not being able to find what she was looking for. And so it really did. It questioned my faith. It really did. It questioned everything I thought before on it. And of course, we processed it to see the reason what happened, why she was in that, situation and stuff. And, and I guess, the same thing too with the fact is that she passed before her parents didn't, why they didn't meet up, I don't know. I don't have that answer. All I know is that what I could do to help her, luckily with me, I'm a medium on that, but I still didn't really understand it. I was very mad. I was very mad at God because of that.
Yeah. Well, did you sense from that experience that she was unhappy?
I didn't sense it. I just thought I felt that she was very confused.
Yeah.
And I felt the fact is that there wasn't much education with her or knowledge about maybe even God or any of that aspect of it. Maybe her belief system, she really didn't have much of a belief system. There wasn't much that she just felt very empty.
Yeah. Well, many of the reports, that I've read, will say that, somebody that dies suddenly, in an accident, let's say, there's a certain period of confusion, afterwards. I mean, let's face it, it's hard, if you're in an accident and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're still around, it can be, I guess that would be pretty confusing to somebody to see if you still survive. So there may be a period of adjustment, but we don't really know how long that takes. But
well, I was, when you were describing this, the first thing that came to mind to me was the fact that, well, of course, what Bob is saying. I mean, you don't know the time element between when she passed and when you saw her. You could have seen her, in the first couple of hours of her passing, in which case a lot of the feedback we've had is that somebody would be faced with confusion if they died suddenly because they don't expect to be crossing over. But on the other hand, if her parents or her mother, as she was looking for, was in such deep grief that she was shut down and the child wasn't able to get to her, now comes to somebody who's open and kind of asking you, can you find my mom so you can make the connection for me?
Ooh, good point.
That's the way I would see it, because we see that very often where, and particularly in talking about this entanglement of the universe, is that there needs to be, we know, first of all, our observation is that there needs to be some love connection between the discarnate on the other side and the person that they need to reach in the physical world. And if they can't reach them directly because either they're shut down or they're not a believer, or they're sending them signs and the person's just not picking it up, there is the need for an intermediary, a medium, to be able to make that connection between the discarnate and the person in the physical.
So that person's grief is literally enabling a lack of communications going on there.
You know, when you first described that, that story, and you would know better than anybody because you were the medium bringing her through. But when I heard you say, when the little girl said that, where's heaven? My first thought was, well, that would be logical, because if let's say the other side is all heaven, that's the way it is, she wouldn't be able to differentiate. I mean, it just is. So she's saying, where's heaven?
Right,
she may be in heaven.
In her upbringing, the word heaven may never have been there.
Right, that's
is
true.
What I thought too.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Bob and Fran, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that your foundation offers out there. And number one, I know that you all have a grief support services, which are groups out there nationally. Can you tell us a little bit about those services?
Well, what we have is afterlife discussion groups, and we don't, term them as really, they're not grief groups, although they're very helpful to people in grief, evidently. What we try to do, since we're not therapists and we don't have professionals running these groups, we have moderators, but there are groups where people, they're safe, small groups, let's say of 10 to 20 people, and it's for the purpose of discussion and sharing experiences and learning about research and we find that just providing information and allowing people to share things, they might be in a group and say, hey, I'm not crazy, somebody else is going through this as well, and they might learn a little bit more about some of the things we were talking about near-death experiences or various things that suggest that our minds can act independently of our brains and so forth. So people tend to, learn and feel, a little bit better about their situation, from these groups. And what we try to do is we set them up in areas where people have expressed interest. We keep a database, and when we have a sufficient number in a particular geographical area, we put a group together. And so that's really, sort of the backbone of the foundation, because that's it's out there and doing the most good, out in the field, so to speak,
Right, and I think historically the way the concept came about was after we had lost our daughter, we were seeking support. And there's a wonderful group in the United States called the Compassionate Friends, and it's for parents who have lost children. The problem we found at the meetings was that they don't want to discuss the afterlife. They don't want you to even go there. Their concept is, you're in grief, we're going to teach you how to live with your grief. So when we would be in these groups and we would bring up a subject like who had a sign from their child, or somebody wanted to talk about that, they constantly were shut down. And what would happen is, after the meeting was over, these parents would stand in the parking lot talking about the afterlife. And that was the concept by which we said, you know what, here we're standing, it's 2 degrees outside. we can see our words in smoke coming out of our mouths. But it was so important for us to talk about where our children were, what they were doing, the validations that we got, the signs that we got, and how we know that they're really still with us. And so that was really what birthed the concept of the Afterlife Discussion Group.
Absolutely. And, their website is www.Forever Family Foundation. And as I'm looking at your site on the support and information, you have just, a huge amount of links to all sorts of different organizations for, that you list on here. And if there's anyone out there that needs help in anything, you can just go to the site and definitely there's some place or someone that will be able to help you on this. Absolutely. A lot of great information on your website.
Well, and, also the Forever Family Foundation has a section of science and discovery so that you are able to read some of the scientists and researchers' information. You also have Signs of Life Radio. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we started a radio show about 2 years ago, and what we do is we invite, various guests, medical doctors, researchers, scientists, authors, practitioners, mediums, and so forth. And we had some of them have written books. We'll discuss the books. We'll have a interesting discussion on some of the shows. Matter of fact, we just started a new format, once a month, where we have we call it The Gathering, which is basically an on-air afterlife discussion group. So we have a panel of people that on our end, and then we open it up because there are a lot of people that can't physically make it to an afterlife discussion group. So we have an interactive one, on the radio. So it's worked out pretty well. We're able to spread the word, in that fashion, and it works out well, being over the internet. So people, you have global listenership, as you well know.
And what day and time does that?
We have that every Thursday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time.
And they can find that link on your website?
Yeah, the link is on our website.
Okay.
We also, in an effort to educate the public and do some fundraising, every year we have a conference. Last year we had a big conference in San Francisco, and we had, presenters from all over the world coming in. And we're having a one-day conference coming up in New York on November 8th.
In Long Island.
Long Island. It's called the Synchronized Universe, Exploring Communication with the Dead. From electronic devices to mediumship. So in the morning portion of it we're going to have with Dr. Claude Swanson, who's an MIT educated physicist, and he wrote a book called The Synchronized Universe, and it's a fascinating book, and he'll be talking about the various evidence that science shows us, that we do survive our physical deaths, and he's going to be followed by Tom and Lisa Butler, who are directors of the American Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena, and they're going to teach people how they can capture spirit voices themselves, and actually, as part of their presentation, they're going to attempt to record some voices, at the event, so that'll be interesting.
Which I have to add is going to be very interesting because the event is taking place in an old mansion called the Woodlands Mansion that was part of a Mellon estate, and it has its own history to it, which we're not going to tell anybody because we're not even telling the butlers. We're going to see what they come up with when they try and gather their voices from the other side.
Wow.
And then in the afternoon,
go to the portaltalkradio.com site or the Forever Family Foundation.org website, you'll find more information on that particular event. So that's your second annual conference called the Synchronized Universe, right?
Right. And we're going to combine that on the afternoon session. There's going to be like a gourmet luncheon with, and we're going to have 10 mediums there that are going to be doing spirit communication. So that'll be an interesting part of the festivity.
Right. And our keynote medium is Suzanne Northrup.
Oh, very good.
So
where's
she
my
has some.
ticket?
I know. Who's doing the cooking? Are you doing the cooking, Bob?
Yeah. You wouldn't want that.
Wow.
I want to ask you, before the death of your daughter, did you believe in mediumship? Did you believe in psychics and messages from the other side?
Honestly, no, I didn't.
Okay.
If you talked to me, 6-7 years ago, I would have probably fought you, every step of that way. I just couldn't conceive of it. So, I was totally closed-minded to it. And of course, I couldn't argue. It took a while for me to believe in it. I was smart enough to keep writing down all these things that were happening that was strange. And then, one day, it hit me like a ton of bricks when I put 10 or 15 statistically improbable occurrences together. And then I realized that it was foolish to think that, that this wasn't real. And of course, we had an unusual circumstance where, the morning of our daughter was killed in a car accident, and the morning of the accident, Fran woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and shook me, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Something horrible is going to happen today." We were together for forever. She never said anything like that to me before, and how seriously do you take it? And of course, a couple of months later, after the accident, obviously you're in shock and grief and so forth. And then I just said to myself, wait a second. I mean, how did Fran know this? Was this a case of precognition, or was this, in my view, was only two possibilities. She was seeing the future, or she was getting sent a message from somebody on the other side, a warning.
And Fran, at that point, though, on it, the fact is they didn't go in complete detail with you, was it?
It was just a sensation. There was no verbal communication. There was nothing. It was just a sensation that I knew something bad. I couldn't tell you what it was, when it was going to happen. Just that something very, very bad was going to happen. And
didn't that shake your faith at all, thinking that why didn't they just follow through with the full message, and I could have saved my daughter that day?
Afterwards, I toyed with that concept, but I also, when we talk about, and you mentioned it before, was there were things we're not meant to know.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I have this belief that there are things that are set in motion for a reason, and they are there in order to have other things happen that will have other things happen that will have other things happen, and those are the things that need to lead us down the pathways we're supposed to go.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but
okay. Oh, here we go. We got on now. But then,
no, I mean, it's a good question that you asked, because that bothered would be putting it mildly. I mean, that really was torturing me afterwards. If only we were able to get a clearer message, or maybe if we were more open to it, or maybe if the communication skills on both sides were better. I mean, if we weren't meant to know, then why was she getting the warning in the first place?
Because look where it brought you. It brought you to the point where you can understand that her death was not for nothing.
Exactly.
And if you were to go, you wouldn't have survived this long.
Well, not just that, because, and I would not say the fact is that I'm going to take your daughter so that way you can help a million other people, and I don't think it's that, but the fact is, look how many more people that you are helping through this. You're right, her death is not just ignored. Look at the good that's come from it, even though it's something that you would rather not have.
Right.
But the blessings that your daughter's given, I'm going to say this, it's come from your daughter. The blessings that she has given you to help all these other people. And it's not just one. I mean, your foundation helps. There's countless people that you've helped through this foundation.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an interesting example of something that happened recently to show you the difference of where I am now or where I was, 6 years ago. In April, Fran's mom had passed away, and she was sick for a while, and it was a long ordeal, and we after her death we needed to get away for a few days, and we went out to Sedona, where we had never been before. And I'm not naturally intuitive, and I don't, have many occurrences that happen to me. But
okay, so you don't have a psychic bone in your body, right?
Yeah, sort of. Well, maybe. So I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream visit, from Fran's mom, and we were very close, when she was alive, and I had a nice conversation with her, and then I woke up and I told Fran about it, and the next night I went to sleep again, and she came to me again, and we had another conversation. I thought it was unusual for me, and it's 2 nights in a row. Well, the third night I go to sleep, and Fran's father comes to me. Fran's father passed in 1981, and I was close with him, but we haven't heard from him since 1981, and to come to me in a dream visit. But it wasn't, just a general thing. He was giving me a message, and very, very clear. He said to me, "Bob, I need to tell you something." I said, "Yes," and he said, "You have a blockage on the left side of your heart, and you need to have that looked at." So I woke up, and I said, if it was 6 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, come on, this
it's a dream.
It's a dream. It means nothing." But knowing what we now know, I said to Fran, I guess it would be silly for me not to, check into it. So when we got back to New York, then I said, all right, I guess I should go see a doctor. And then the next thing was, okay, I'm going to go to a doctor, and he's going to say, "Why are you here?" And I'm going to say, because my dead father-in-law came to me and told me I have a blockage in my heart. So, I had to find the right doctor, and then we remembered that we had, there is a doctor in Manhattan, his name is Dr. Kelman, he's a medical doctor, but he's also a holistic practitioner, and he's a Kabbalist, and he's very spiritual. So I figured, here's a guy that I could go to, and I went there, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I told him the whole story. And then he said, "Well, we'd be foolish not to look into this." And to make a long story short, he called me, he started doing a battery of tests, and he called me up, and he said, "Look," he said, "I don't think that you have a heart blockage. However, you have about 6 risk factors that if we leave unchecked, undoubtedly you will get it, So, we took corrective action, and these things were all reversible, and I'm doing fine. So, he calls me up and he says, "I just want to tell you," he says, I think your father-in-law must love you very much, because, so, there's an incident, that I'm now, knowing what I know, I'm open to it, whereas before, and I'm sure a lot of people today would just look at that and say, that's nuts,
We're opening the doors to possibilities.
Yeah.
And with your foundation, with our show, with many others, are opening up the doors for others. Look outside the box. You'll be surprised in the things that you see. Look for the pennies on the ground that your loved ones are leaving you, the trail to let you know that they're okay. I mean, there's all these signs that our loved ones on the other side are trying to give us. And if you're not going to look outside the box, you're not going to see them. And they work hard. I think they really do work hard for them to do that.
They do. I believe that this is not a simple task for them to communicate and give us signs and do the things that they do.
Yeah, I mean, even in the process of mediumship that you do, I mean, it's you're working hard, but there's nothing that's going to happen unless they're able to work just as hard or harder to get through to you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But, yeah.
Well, while we're talking about mediums, your foundation acquires and tests mediums for certification. And they also provide mediumship sessions for individuals out there. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Well, what we do is, we really started it in an effort to, to protect the public and to give a resource. I mean, there are many, I think with the advent of all these, TV mediums and the popularity, I mean, there are a lot of mediums that became rich, and not a lot, but a few, very high profile, and I think what happens, that spawned a whole new, interest in people, and some people, unfortunately, looked at it purely as a business, and they really didn't have the gift of mediumship. So, when you're in such horrible grief, I think, going to a medium that is fraudulent, could do a lot more harm than good, obviously. So what we did is we, I met with various researchers at universities. Gary Schwartz helped me a lot.
Wait, let's stop on that name for a second, because I have to say to you, okay, and I'm going to make this public, Angela.
No,
we have tried to get him on our show since the day one, and we cannot get a hold of this man. Do you know him?
Yes.
Because I am putting it out on the air. Dr. Gary Schwartz, we would love for you to come on our show.
Okay, well, I'll send him an email and with your information.
Okay, Bob, so please continue on.
Continue. Sorry, Angela.
So, Gary showed me what he was doing, and he, Gary was the one of the founders of our foundation, that he helped us put it together, and he also, gave me some advice on setting up the program, and, I copied some of the scoring methods that he uses in research, and I added a few finishing touches that I thought were improvements, and basically what we do is, we used to do it physically, now we do it by the internet, and when we did it physically, what we would have is 4 sitters, that we'd have it in a hotel setting, in a big room, and we'd have desks and stations set up in the 4 corners of the room, and mediums would rotate, and they would give 15-minute readings to each of the 4 sitters, and the sitters would be pre-schooled on scoring, and what to look for and how to mark the pieces of evidence, and we'd also have a blind session where they didn't see the sitter, and we'd compile all the scores and be able to come up with a composite that would show where they were. Now, it's not this is not a system that's by any means foolproof, or I suspect that there are a lot of excellent mediums that have gone through the program and unsuccessfully, and there's some that may have passed that turned out that weren't that gifted, but it's the best that we can really come up with, and for the most part I think it works very well. And all we're saying is that at least under controlled conditions, that mediums that go through this program successfully have shown a very high level of proficiency, and that we can also attest that there was no deception and there was no fraud.
Well, Bob, we are getting close to the end of our show, but one of the things I do want to mention before we close our show is your website again for the foundation is foreverfamilyfoundation.org, where you'll find science and discoveries and Signs of Life radio, even a signed register, books, music, and videos. You have some upcoming events on Thursday, November the 6th. You have mediums and messages in Huntington, New York, and also, again, the Synchronized Universe on Saturday, November 8th. And because of your blessed, generous mediums with the foundation, they are offering a holidays pass, reunite with loved ones, and they're going to offer a night of spirit communications in 2 locations, Melville, New York, and also in Connecticut. So for more information, go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org. Bob and Fran, it's been a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, yes. But I want to say one thing. Is there an anniversary birthday coming around you? Because there's a young lady next to you now. She's got brown hair. She's got like a, it's not a hairband or a ribbon in her hair, actually. And she's mentioning about, I say it's a birthday because the fact is that she keeps showing me the celebration around her. So there's a celebration around her, but there's a young lady that's next to you. She's standing next to Fran.
You are absolutely right on. And I'm going to probably say that that's my daughter, and it's my birthday.
Well, she is saying to you happy birthday, and she just has this, it's almost like she's opening this box and explodes all these confetti and these ribbons and all this good stuff around you. And she's saying for you to celebrate this birthday. This is a great thing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, Bob and Fran Ginsburg, thank you so much. And thank you for the listeners. Again, for more information about the Ginsburgs and Forever Family Foundation, go to foreverfamilyfoundation.org.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and coming up, stay tuned. We'll be going to break here for a few minutes, and we will have Annette Martin back on, who is our psychic detective. So stay tuned to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm your host, Tuesday Miles.
And I'm Angela Thomas.
We'll be right back.
Radio Network. Welcome back.
And welcome back to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm your host, Tuesday Miles.
And I'm Angela Thomas.
Great interview with Bob and Fran, Angela.
Oh, absolutely. Always very interesting and always very informative.
Absolutely, and I thank them for joining us today. And we have our next guest that's joining us today. Angela, why don't you introduce her?
Well, who we have on the line now, and as our second-hour guest, is Annette Martin, who has been dubbed America's Greatest Living Psychic. You've seen her on Court TV, The Nancy Grace Show, 48 Hours. You know, I could go on and on, the History Channel. Welcome to the show, Annette.
Thank you very much, Angela and Tuesday. It's so nice to be here with you.
Boy, you have made your round. You have
yes, I have.
Everywhere.
And I hope there's going to be more.
It sure seems that you have a lot more to share, actually, on it. I mean, does it ever end? I mean, on your website, and let's give her website out here. It's www.annette, and there's a dash, and martin.com. But as I'm looking on your website, I mean, you talk about psychic readings and psychic detective and medical intuitive and ghost busting, animal readings. I mean, you have a huge history of all this stuff. And you know what? You've been such great success on it.
Yes, I have. It's been absolutely gorgeous and wonderful for me. I just enjoy every single minute of it, because one of the things that I like to do is that I like to help people bring closure in their lives.
Well, don't we all need that for all kinds of reasons on it?
Absolutely. Depending upon what issues you have, you know. And the people who come to see me for a regular reading, they want to know about their careers, they want to know about their children, their husband, their love life, if they're not married, if they're going to travel, their health.
Health?
Yes, those are all the things that people always come to ask me about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely on it. Now, when you're looking at somebody that has that maybe they don't know yet that something's going wrong with their body on it. In fact, I've got several questions in regard to this. And so, what do you see when you're seeing something that's medically intuitive?
Well, what happens, Tuesday, is that when I'm looking at someone, I close my eyes and take a couple of deep breaths, and of course always bring in the white light, which is the title of my new book, Gift of the White Light.
Oh, yes.
And I begin to start at the top of the head, and I look inside to see all of the psychological things that are going on and the emotional aspect of that person. And so then I begin to tell them what I'm seeing, and they generally either nod their head, they say yes, or they begin to cry. They say, yes, that's very true. And then I move down into the body, and when I'm looking at the body, it's like an X-ray.
Okay.
So if you can visualize that.
Okay, I can.
It's like an X-ray, and so I'm looking to see if there's anything wrong. Everything is in full color for me, so it's not in black and white. And if there's a particular organ, let's say the kidneys, okay? If there's a problem with the kidney will kind of jump out to me and become a little bit larger so that I can see that there might be a problem going on there. And so that's kind of how it goes.
Wow. Now, you say that the emotional triggers that can create disharmony in the energetic system, and that way it creates a state of disease. And so, you know, do we do this to ourselves sometimes with our own emotions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another reason why I feel that it's important for people to come and possibly see a medical intuitive or someone who's extremely intuitive, to be able to get that feedback and have us be a mirror for you to see what it is that you're actually doing to yourself. because sometimes it's very difficult for us to feel and to know what we're doing emotionally.
Right. Right.
Well, you know, Annette, I was reading the biography on you, Gift of the White Light by James N. Fry. First of all, I got to tell you, fabulous book.
Thank
and
you.
while I was reading it, I kept on thinking, what? And, you know, there were times where I just felt so badly for you, and of course I have to remember what a blessing you are to so many people out there. But can you tell us a little bit about my biggest question, what is the gift of the white light?
The white light is something that I have been seeing ever since I was a little girl. I was an only child, and so every night when I would go to bed, I would feel, and then I began to see this lovely white light all around me. And I was being raised in Catholicism, so I immediately thought that, oh, this has to be from God. And I was, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old when all of this was beginning to happen. And so I would just sort of snuggle up in this wonderful white light and just feel so taken care of and so enraptured by the light. And as I grew, what happened was the white light would always seem to be there. And as I became aware of my intuition at 7 years old, then I was told by my personal guide that I needed to use this white light. And all I had to do was to visualize it coming down through the top of my head, through the frontal lobe, and bring it down through my body and have it go out into my aura. And so that it would give me energy and it would also help my intuition.
You know, does that have to, does intent, faith, and belief have to play a part in this also too, though, Annette?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Does intent, faith, and belief have to play a part with this white light? Is it something that if somebody's not believing in it but seeing it, does it still give you that effect?
It certainly will.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to see it, but if you can feel it,
okay,
and have the intent that you want to have that, and it's for everyone, and it's free. You know,
there you go.
I keep telling all of my clients and all of my students, this is something free. It's for all of us to have. This energy is there, and what we need to do is to use it.
Okay, absolutely, because I know that when my gifts, what I call exploded open, you know, first things that people were telling me is, you need to protect yourself with this white light, and I, for the life of me, could not see this white light. I mean, I stared at the light bulbs, I pushed my fingers in my eyeballs, and I mean, I tried everything for this white light to come over me, for me to feel this instant just bubble around me that nothing could harm me, and I'm talking like everybody, you know. I mean, it wasn't just spirit, but it was anybody, and I'm not feeling it. I just cannot get it. It's not coming over me on it, and so. Again, the light bulb went off. It was because my belief, it wasn't in my heart with it.
That's right.
And that's when I when I connected with it, you know, to trust and believe in something that is so much more higher and powerful than you are in that aspect of it. You're right, absolutely on that.
Absolutely.
Woo.
And, you know, and there also has to be, you have to let go of the ego. And that is one of the things also that I teach my students, is that you need to let go of that ego, and you have to trust in that energy, and you have to trust and know and believe that it is there.
Okay. Now, when you say with this, it says with the physical diseases appearing as external manifestations of disturbances to our energy fields, and so is it that these diseases also radiate into our fields, into our auras?
Oh, absolutely. That God energy does. Absolutely. And that's what this white light is definitely a God energy, as far as I'm concerned. That's what I see it as.
Can we use that for healing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. That's
yes, I do, actually.
Okay, so you do use that for healing. That would be, to me, a good thing, that we have the ability to help aid in our healing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We can use that and to help ourselves. Not that we have to go around and heal people, because there's a whole process in healing other people and helping them to heal themselves, because we actually are doing that healing ourselves.
Well, speaking of healing, Annette, in your book, you speak about channeling Edgar Casey when you give health readings.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Well, let me tell you
that resource.
Right. Let me tell you about this lovely man, Mr. Edgar Cayce. I did not know that he had been around me ever since I was a young girl. I did not know this until 1969 when I was in Hong Kong doing a reading for a lady. My husband was at one end of the table and her husband was at the other end. We had just finished a lovely meal, and I was starting to do a reading for this woman. I had on one of these 50s blouses, you know, where it was very poofy on the shoulders.
Right.
And I started the reading, and all of a sudden, I felt this pressure on my left shoulder, like a hand. And I felt this hand pushing down on my shoulder. Well, the lady sitting across from me, all of a sudden her eyes just got huge and round, and she's pointing. She couldn't even talk, and she's just pointing at me. And my husband is looking, and he's going, oh, and he goes white. Her husband goes white. I thought they were both going to faint, and I'm sitting there going, somebody is pushing down on my shoulder, and I don't know who this is. And I turned, and I couldn't see anyone. Of course, there was no one there. And the tears started coming, and all of a sudden I heard this voice, and he said, Annette, this is Mr. Edgar Cayce, and I am here to help you with your medical readings. Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
just
that is tremendous.
Beside myself, and of course, more tears, and I continued. The words went out of my mouth so fast that I could hardly take a breath. I mean, he was just giving me all this medical information about this woman, and the next day she went to her physician and verified everything. It was 100% accurate.
Well, that is an amazing
Mr.
story.
Cayce,
one of the other things in your book, and you've got so many things in your book, it's absolutely fascinating, by the way.
Thank you.
You talk about when you were young and you were praying at St. Gabriel's altar, and a white mist comes before you. Can you tell our audience about that?
Oh, yes. I had gone in the church, and I was praying because I was distraught, and I wasn't sure what was happening in my life, because at that point in time, I wanted to be a very famous opera singer or a movie star. And all of these things that I was doing, picking up things about people and knowing what was going on with them and being able to see inside of bodies, it was becoming very confusing. And I thought, well, maybe since I'm going to Catholic school, maybe God's trying to tell me that I'm supposed to be a nun. So I went and I'm praying in the church, and as I'm praying, I look up to the altar, and there is this mist that begins to form. Oh, my gosh. I thought, oh, what is this? Oh, Lord, is Jesus going to appear on the altar? Is God going to appear? What is this? And out of the mist comes this very tall man with nothing on except something around his waist and covering everything that should be covered.
Okay, yeah, we got the grape leaves going there, okay.
Yes, and I'm just, like, I can't talk, and he told me that he said not to worry, that he was my guide, and his name was Kama, and he's been with me since before I was born, and he will be with me until I die in this lifetime.
Cool.
Well, you are just very, very blessed, Annette. I mean, truly with the enormous gift. And, one of the things about you specifically is that you are a psychic detective who solves homicides, cold case files, missing persons, and things of that nature. And in your book, you were talking about, which is fascinating, about a particular Cottonwood case, and the victim was Patty Kalitsky. And you have the ability to get into the mind of a victim as well as the mind of a criminal. Can you talk about a little bit about that experience of getting into the mind of the victim?
Yes, I'm able to go back into the scenario of where the murder takes place. And it's kind of like when I take my 3 deep breaths and I bring in the white light, and if I hold a photograph or an object of the victim or the person who is missing, which is a process called psychometry, as you all know.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is I almost immediately am swept into a videotape. And I go back in time, and I'm able to go to the scene, or even sometimes before the scene of the murder, and I pick up the conversations of the victim, and I become the victim, and then I can switch over to the assailant, and I become the assailant.
Ooh.
And then when it gets really kind of sticky and kind of nasty, I become the observer. So what happens during the whole time that I'm working on this murder case is that I am playing these 3 different parts, which is very, very fascinating, and my voice will change. It's kind of a, you might even call it part of a mediumship as well as being very intuitive. I mean, it's
like
kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly.
This particular case that you were talking about, Angela, had happened 35 years before I worked on it.
Wow.
And the captain brought out the little girl, not a little girl, but she was a young girl, about 19, brought out her dress. And when I held that dress, it was as if this murder had just occurred.
Wow.
So the impression of the energy and the trauma was on the clothing, which just excelled me and just swept me right into the murder scene.
Well, it is an amazing section of the book about this case. And for those of you, we are talking about Gift of the White Light by James N. Fry, and it is a biography about Annette Martin. Annette, let me ask you, how do you separate yourself, being Annette Martin, from the emotional impact of, let's say, a murder?
Well, I'll tell you what, it is fairly easy for me to do, fortunately, because from the time I was 9 years old until I was 18, I studied drama with a very famous actress in San Francisco at the Elizabeth Holloway School of the Theater. And at 9 years old, she was teaching me how to jump into another character. She would have me do all these improvisational scenes. And she'd ask me to be someone who's climbing up a tree and falling out of a tree and breaking my leg. And I'd say, well, Mrs. Holloway, I've never climbed a tree and I've never broken my leg, so how do I do that? And she'd say, darling, just pretend. Just pretend that that happens to you and see what happens. And so then I would do it. And then she would have me do something entirely differently. So I was trained for all those years on how to jump into another character, which of course was a prerequisite for being an actress. And so when I'm doing the murder cases, that is exactly what's happening, is that I'm allowing myself to just jump into these characters. Now, Annette does not go anywhere. So when I'm going into the video, I become that person, the victim, and I become the assailant, and I become the observer, which are 3 separate people from Annette Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does make sense. Is there ever a time where you feel like I have the energy of that criminal still with me?
No, never.
Good.
And I'll tell you why. Because when I'm finished, again, I take in my 3 deep breaths and I bring in the white light and I just cover myself with the white light. And then I let go.
Well,
now,
one of the things I wanted to ask you, I've done missing person cases, and I am not a psychic detective like you. But there were times where I felt when I focused on the criminal, let's say the abductor, that there were times I had to stop and ask myself, are we in this right now location? Is that criminal standing right there, or am I in a memory of that criminal?
Mm-hmm.
Does that happen to you?
No, because I always know that I'm in the memory. I always know that I'm in that videotape. Because that is an impression. It's very, very similar to the ghost work that I do. And so when I go with Lloyd Arbach, who is my partner, he is a parapsychologist, very famous. When we go out on ghost cases, I am able to walk in there, and within 5 minutes, I can tell you if there's a ghost or not, and if it's an impression.
An impression. Explain it. Impression.
The impression is like a videotape. And so it's a videotape of whatever that dramatic incident occurred at that particular place. And many people will call us and tell us, oh my gosh, at 11 o'clock at night, we hear this bang, 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 and it happens every single night at 11 o'clock. As this is an example. And so we know then that this is definitely an impression, because it's repeatable. And so it's like a looping tape that goes over and over and over again.
Goodness gracious. Annette, I want to turn to one of the biggest things I feel, very landmarkish. You were the first psychic to be sworn in as an expert witness in a murder case. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that happened?
Yes. Well, that was really interesting because what happened was the gal who was up for murder, her lawyer called me and asked me if I would come and talk to the jury for her. And I said, well, certainly, you know, I would certainly do that. There's no reason why I would not do that. And so it created quite a stir in the courtroom because the prosecuting attorney was very upset to have a psychic come into the court.
I can imagine.
And so, but what happened was two judges had to make the decision to allow me to come into court. And so I was able to go there and go on the stand and speak to the jury. And that was an interesting thing to do. And it was so wonderful because I just turned and I just looked at them and I told them who I was and what I did and some of the cases that I've worked on. And I wish that I'd had a camera to capture their faces because some of them had their mouths open, some of them their eyes were just huge, and others were just staring at me like, you know, can this be possible? Can someone really, really do this? So it went over extremely well, even though I wasn't on there more than probably 8 minutes.
Well, still, though, 8 minutes, I mean, you know, I have never heard of a psychic being called as a witness in a murder case.
That's right.
And so what a phenomenal thing to occur to begin with, right?
Yes,
so
it
8
was.
minutes, that's a lot of time in a court of law.
Yes, it is. Yes. And it was the Susan Polk murder case out in Manteca, California. And I'm afraid that the jury did convict her. And what's even more interesting is that Susan Polk is extremely intuitive. And that's what the lawyer wanted to prove, was that people can be intuitive.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to prove that people can be intuitive.
Right, because in the case, Susan had told her husband, who is a psychiatrist, many, many things. She had predicted many things to him, and then he used the information for himself. And so she was trying to tell the jury that she knew that he was really going to try and kill her, and she was in great fear of her life. Mm. And what happened was she ended up killing him in defending herself. But they have punished her, and she's guilty of murder.
Goodness gracious.
Mm-hmm.
Annette, tell us a little bit about the Patty Hearst case.
Oh, yes. Well, that kind of came about. I can't tell you too much about that one, but I had actually gone and done my very first murder case with the Marin Sheriff's Office in Marin County, California. And I had been giving them a 5-hour session on this particular case, and in the room there were judges, there was the sheriff and the district attorney, and a couple of FBI men, and there were about 25 people in the room when I was doing this, reading for them for another case. And so after that, when they did find the gentleman that had murdered this particular girl, they contacted me and asked me if I would come and help them with the Patty Hearst case and with the SLA bombings that were going on in San Francisco. And so I did. And that was very interesting.
Well, you've really worked with a lot of high-profile cases and some that are not so high-profile out there. What about your work do you enjoy the most?
What do I enjoy the most? Well, gosh, that is really difficult to say because I enjoy so much of it. I love doing the murder cases and finding that person who murdered someone else because I feel that is so wrong, and it just makes me very angry. And so when I can find someone who committed a murder, that makes me very happy. And also, it makes me extremely happy to know that I have brought closure to the family. And so that is so rewarding. Absolutely rewarding.
So have you been brought in on cases, let's say, like the JonBenet case?
No, I have not been called in for that.
I see. So you just sit and wait until they contact you? You don't go out and volunteer it?
Correct. I do not call them. No, they must call me or the family must call me.
Okay, understandable. And now we have a virtual auditorium on paltalk.com, and one of our listeners in the auditorium is asking, do you ever have dreams about events before they happen?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. And in fact, years back, I was getting very traumatic predictions about world things that were going to be happening, dealing with other countries and what was going to happen, what was going to go on. And it got to be so stressful for me because I knew that I couldn't call the President of the United States and tell him. I mean, who's going to listen to a psychic?
Right.
You can't do that. And it became so stressful that I didn't know what to do with the information. And, of course, this was about 25 years ago, and where, we were not as acceptable as we are today. So I just said, okay, to my guide, Kama, I said, look, I can't do this anymore. You can't be giving me all these things because I can't do anything about it. And so they stopped. But now what I will get is sometimes before the family or the police agency will call me, I will sometimes pick up on a case before I even know about it.
How so?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So you pick up on the case before it's ever publicly acknowledged?
No, after it's occurred.
Oh, after
it's occurred, Because, you see, once it's occurred, Tuesday, it's out there in the ether. It's out there in the energy fields.
I see. Is there ever a time, Annette, when you get scared by precognitive things or even the cases that you're working on?
No, I don't get frightened. Mm-mm.
So you feel that that's the white light that is with you?
Yes. And also, what I also feel and hypothesize on is the fact that I believe to be a psychic detective, you need to have a certain type of personality. You need to be able to accept this as reality. This is what's happened. This person has been murdered. We do have a murderer, okay, and we're going to solve it. You need to also have a very happy type of personality. If a person has any kind of sadness or melancholiness to their personality, what I have found in my students is that they have great difficulty, especially in doing police work.
So not all psychics do psychic detective work.
Oh, no. There's only a handful of us in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as I've seen, by the way, on Court TV, and you're very fascinating and very, very gifted.
Thank
I
you.
have to say. Now, you talked about teaching, Annette. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do teach to individuals out there?
Yes. Well, actually, I have stopped teaching at the moment because I'm so busy. But I do have a new book out that's called Discovering Your Psychic World. And this is a workbook, and it's a compilation of my teaching of how to work on your intuition and how to develop it.
So now, where can we find that Discovering Your Psychic World?
Well, you can find it on my website. That's probably the easiest at www.annette-martin.com.
Very good.
And they can order it
directly. I know
directly.
The Gift of the White Light is a fascinating book. And when I was reading it, I felt like James Fry was my neighbor.
Oh,
You know,
he would love to hear that.
Close to him, as though he was relaying everything about your work and who you were. And you know, one of the things that really stuck out, and, you know, I said in the beginning of the show that I really felt badly for you, was a time when he talked about your friends turning on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was mentioned was the phenomenon that took over like witch-burning mobs. Do you think that there are people out there today, in our world today, that are fearful of psychics and would maybe even harm them now?
I don't think they would harm them, no. I don't get that feeling at all. But I do feel there are a lot of people, of course, who are still very skeptical, and a lot of people who are afraid. And, you know, the people who have a lot of fear about it are people who they themselves have fear about really knowing who they are. And I think that seems to be the root of it, is that if we don't know who we really are and how we really feel, then anything that's kind of strange out there, we become very fearful.
Well, isn't like any psychic that doesn't want to really read themselves because they don't really want to know, you know,
Exactly.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it
Exactly.
within themselves about the fact is that it is what it is, and, you know, we're telling ourselves the truth, but yet we're not ready to hear our own truth.
Exactly.
You know, you also do work with finding missing pets,
Yes.
missing animals and stuff like this, and I think this is really important because people do treat their animals as their children, as their family member. And the fact how devastating it is that when a pet runs away and it becomes missing, you know, the thought of it is that they're out in the cold in the wild and they're going to get hit and they're going to get killed and, you know, I mean, and so on and so forth. And so, you know, people, how can they contact you for this on it? What would they need to do for you to be able to help them?
Well, what they need to do is they need to go to my website, like I said, www.annette-martin.com. And on the upper left-hand side, they will see a big button up there that says Schedule a Reading. And what you do is you go up there and click on that button, and it's going to take you to a couple of pages where you fill out your name, and you can choose the time and date when you can come and see me or have a phone reading, because I do phone readings all over the world.
And you say come see you, and you're located in?
I'm in Campbell, California.
Campbell, ooh, beautiful area.
Mm-hmm.
Nice area that you picked up. That's near San Francisco?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
A beautiful area on it. And so when you go looking for a missing pet, is there certain things, certain signs that you look for? How do you find?
Well, what I do is I ask them to send a photograph of the animal and also to send a map of the area where the animal was lost, and to mark it on the map as to where the animal was lost, and if there had been any sightings, to also mark that on the map. And then what I do is I psychometrize the photo of the animal, and I track the animal. So I'm kind of like a bloodhound.
Let's describe to people who don't understand what psychometry is, because you've mentioned that a couple times.
Right. Psychometry is when we hold an object or a photo and we're able to pick up the very subtle energies that are on the photo. Because, you see, when we take a photograph of ourselves, we do leave an imprint of energy on there. And did you know that the Maasai in Africa will kill people if they take their photographs?
Okay.
Because they're afraid that you're taking their whole spirit away.
Interesting on
And
that one.
very interesting.
It is, and maybe that's the reason why on some photos that I take, I mean, and this is the part where you think, am I seeing things? Am I hallucinating? Why is that picture still moving?
Uh-huh.
Have you seen pictures such as that?
Yes.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's the energy. You're seeing the energy on the photo.
Now I know I'm not crazy by myself.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy.
Somebody else has seen those, because I have to say that I have seen photos move. Still photos move.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, of course, we rub our eyes, blink, 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 walk away, come back, and still moving and thinking, this is impossible.
Yeah, no,
How
it's the
can
energy.
or spirits manipulate something like that?
Well, they're not manipulating it.
Okay.
What it is the actual energy that the person has put into the photograph. And so what you should do, Tuesday, is do the psychometry. Hold the photograph and take your deep breaths and bring in the white light and see what you pick up.
You know, I'm just wondering if that gets me out of my comfort zone. I think the fact is that I'm able to do that, but I think there's that comfort zone with me. That the fact is that I'm afraid to see what I want to see.
Uh-huh. That's exactly it. And that is one of the major things that you need to get over to really become a professional psychic.
Okay.
You need to get over that feeling of fear, because there's nothing to fear.
Yeah, because at home, my audio shuts off. And I tell you, the spirits, they just get so frustrated with me. I can see the little old mouse being madder as heck at me, because I'm saying to them, I can see your mouth. I know you're talking to me. I can't hear you. I can't hear you in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that the reason why? Is that it's out of my comfort zone?
Yes. Uh-huh. And you're afraid. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know how to work on that one. I still just can't get over that one yet on it. And they're just going to have to be patient while I do that on
Right.
it.
Well, you need to get my book, Discovering Your Psychic World.
That's right. Suggest the host get your book for that one on it. So on ghost busting, you know, I mean, you've worked with Lloyd all over the place and stuff on it. And, you know, in fact, I'm going to meet with Lloyd at the end of the month here, so I'm looking forward to that. But you talked about ghost busting on it. And so tell us about one of your favorite experiences with ghosts.
One of my favorite stories, oh gosh, I've got a lot of stories. We only put a little bit in Gift of the White Light because I'm going to be writing another book myself about all my personal experiences with ghosts, which have been many. But I think the most fun ghost that I've ever run into is a lady out at the Moss Beach Distillery. They call her the Blue Lady, but actually she has told me she wants to be called Kate, C-A-Y-T-E.
Okay.
And Kate is just absolutely the most charming, sexy, provocative ghost I've ever encountered.
Okay.
She is just a lot of fun, and she was murdered by her estranged husband because she was having an affair with a piano player whose name was Charlie. And the estranged husband caught them down on the beach in a cove, and he stabbed her to death. And so she never left. She did not go into the white light at all. And she stayed, and she haunts the Moss Beach Distillery. And she does all kinds of things. She moves things. She turns tables over. And you can talk to Lloyd about it because you know what she's done? She's walked right through him a couple of times.
Oh, my gosh.
And he just about fainted and broke out in a sweat. His face got red. And I was standing there watching this and going, oh, my Lord, I can't believe this. But that's how provocative she is.
It's funny because you think, you know, in many other stories of ghosts that have been here for a long time seem to be, excuse my French, pissed off all the time. You know, so at least that she's found some kind of ground to be a little showing some happiness and showing her true colors and what she is.
Oh, yeah, and she loves it there. Oh, she loves the people, and, you know, she has no intentions of leaving.
Huh. You know, that, sometimes I just wonder the fact is that do we entertain them? We must entertain them.
Oh, we do entertain them. She's very entertained by people. And in fact, she's, even while I was there one night, she took an earring off of a woman's ear and hid it in the kitchen.
No kidding.
Yes.
You know, and the fact is that I've also had items actually show up in a Sparkletts bottle, which is those big old huge water bottles that you put on these little tank things to get the water out. But the items that they put in there was no possible way that they could get those items in there.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so they either got magic or powers, one of the two. But the fact is, they're doing stuff that freaks me out. So how do we get rid of sometimes when people call and they call for a team of investigators, they call you, they call Lloyd, and the fact of it is the haunting's not so pleasant, and the haunting is disrupting this family. So do you have a process that you help them to move on or leave?
Yes, we do.
What do you do?
And yeah, I use a process to help them go into the light. But one of the key things here is to talk to the ghost, and that's one of the things that I seem to have a gift with being able to communicate with ghosts, because it's like I walk into a place, and if there's a ghost, immediately they want to talk to me, because I think they see that I can hear them and I can see them.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, oh, there's somebody who I can talk to. She sees me. And so
Absolutely.
I always ask them, why they're there, what happened, why are they staying, is there something that they haven't finished, is something that they need to do, is there anything I can do for them, and would they, at the end, then I ask them if they would like to go into the light and join their family or their friends. And most of the time they say yes, but not always. We have 27 ghosts out at the USS Hornet, which is a huge battleship out here in the Alameda, California. And there's no way those guys are leaving. No way. They're having too much fun.
And so as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm actually in my bedroom, because this is where all my unit is, behind me in my bed, of course, and I'm hearing my bed creak. Creak, 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 creak. And I know there's something sitting on my bed. I know it's walking across my bed, and there's a lot of... So the fact is, how do I weed these all out? Because they just keep coming. Do you have that problem with your own home? Do you get a lot of activity in your own home?
I get activity, but they usually come just to give me information, or they've come to observe me. I've had several Native American Indians come, because at that point in time in my life, I was doing a lot of things with a medicine man in Taos, New Mexico, and they were coming to check me out. And it was just absolutely amazing. And my poor husband, when you're lying in bed and I go, honey, by the way, there's a Native American ghost standing here next to me. He does very well.
Okay. So it's just really by...
But I do not have them tripping across my house and doing things. No, that does not happen.
I'm going to have to do something, learn that technique or something, because they just, I know they love me to death. I do know that. But there comes a time when...
Okay, are you sitting down and talking to them?
I do give them my time. I do, I set aside times, and I let them know that, on so-and-so day or later on tonight, meet me here, this is where I'll be, I'll sit down. I do, but see, once I do that, then they go get their brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and friends and nephews and all that good stuff, and they bring them all in.
Well, honey, you need to be a little firmer with them and tell them, that you can't have that.
Yeah.
That you need to have your privacy and you need to have your life.
Right, I do, and then there seems to be that I do get that respect. I do get that respect, but, it's just, I just feel like the fact is where I'm sitting at in my area, there's just a lot of activity. There just is, and maybe I'm just the only medium in the area.
Well, that could be.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be, and so they want to come and talk to you.
Okay.
Are you doing any automatic writing at all?
No, I haven't done that.
Why don't you try that? That's what I'm picking up, okay? Sit down, get a pencil, okay, and a pad of paper that has lines on it.
Okay.
And let the pencil just rest on the paper and close your eyes and take in the white light and just let your hand go.
Okay.
And have a tape recorder going, okay? And so if you begin to hear things, then start talking. And just let your hand, and even if it's just scribbling, just let it be there.
Okay. Yeah, I did have one the other night ask me what I wanted. He asked me what I wanted, and and I really have to say, I shook my head and said, what I want, I want to know what you want. You know, and I thought that was very interesting on why that question was really asked to me. What do you want? I actually recorded it on the EVP. What do you want, he said.
There you go. You need to tell him what you want.
Oh.
If he's asking you what you want, then maybe he can help you get what you want.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It's the forehead. Oh, my gosh. Angela?
Well, Annette, thank you very much for being on the show tonight. And for listeners, please go to www.annette-martin.com to learn more about her book on discovering your psychic world and Gift of the White Light by James Fry.
Well, this went too fast. Absolutely too fast.
It certainly did.
We could talk forever.
It did. I know you could. Well, we'll have to have you on longer next time. I hope that you'll come back.
I certainly will.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really had fun.
Oh, I did too. It was a pleasure, Angela. Everybody out there, thank you for listening to Portal Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm your host, Tuesday Miles.
And I'm Angela Thomas.
And God bless you all, and have a great week ahead of you. Take care of yourself and each other. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.